That sounds fun.
But it is great to have you. We appreciate it, especially on such a great time to be talking about San Jose State football. I know John was watching a lot. I was watching a lot. The 2020 Mountain West Coach of the Year. Did you get a trophy? Did they ship it to you? I mean, there can't really be a ceremony. What's the deal with that?
No. But that was nice recognition. I felt like for our team. Anytime you get an award like that, it's got everything to do with everybody else and so little to do with you. I was like, okay, great. But really, when it happened, I was really more interested in beating Nevada that week, and with our team. And so, I think anytime something like that happens, it's a great example of other people lifting you up as the head coach. And that's what I've had here with our staff and our administration. It's just a lot of great collaboration, good people, really, really good people.
Winning the Mountain West or any conference in Division I college football is impressive, but to do it the way you guys did it this year, training camp away from where you guys live and normally play, and was it more satisfying, or is it just accumulation of everything that you knew would one day happen?
It was definitely really special. And we were in a funny space, just the way this thing started and COVID and our county and where all that was, right? And so for it to happen that way was really special. But I think the bigger special part of it, or the thing that I really focus on, was just, 2 years ago, we were a 1-11 football team. And the amount of work that our players did and our coaches did and our administration did to get us to this point where we could be in that title game and play for that was so special. And so that was where it was more like the COVID stuff was kind of an added distraction, but it was also a little bit galvanizing for us as a program, because I think we might have had it. I think only Danny Gonzalez and the guys in New Mexico had it worse, or had it more challenging than us, I should say, more challenging than us. So
for people that don't know, they spent the whole season in Vegas. Like, they were just in Vegas the whole time.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. I mean, it's wild. For you guys though, to be 7-0, going into the bowl game, which hasn't happened at San Jose State since 1939. Top 25 CFP final rankings, finished 22nd. But, San Jose State, I don't know if it felt this way to you at the time. You were a guy who was not a coordinator before you got a head coaching job. And there are examples of those guys succeeding. But I think from the outside, you go, okay, how does anybody hiring, whether it's a GM hiring a head coach at the professional level or an athletics director at the college level, how do you identify this skill, right, to build a culture, to build up a program in somebody where you don't have now? It's like, if you're not a Sean McVay assistant coach, right, we don't really know exactly what to make of what you do. So what was it like? How did you sell yourself when you didn't have, hey, here's the offense I ran last year that was 5th in the nation?
That's a good question. I think it had more to do with my belief in San Jose State University and what I thought football could be here, what I thought football could be to the university, what I thought it could be to the city, San Jose. Having been an assistant here for 6 years, I think gave me a little bit of perspective on just what was good, what was bad, what was missing, what could be added. But in my interview process, what really came down to is that I believed we could build a championship program here. And I was able to communicate that, with the committee and with the president and the athletic director. And really, I was trying to find out how bad they wanted to go on that ride too. And it was a really, kind of interesting, exciting interview, like a lot of energy and a lot of good questions. And it was a pretty special moment. When I came out of there, I felt great. I called my wife on the drive up to, I was flying out of Oakland because I had to go recruiting the next day. And I called my wife. She started crying on the phone. She's like, "Oh my God, you're going to get it. We have to move." Like, it was that.
What I'm always fascinated is by just watching you from afar. I think it's fair to say you're a very positive, upbeat person. And you get this job, and I think like a lot of Mountain West jobs, when they're first kind of, I worked for Pat Hill, but I was never around when he kind of took the program in 97, 98, and 99, like the heavy lifting. And I always heard war stories about that. and his was more like a force of will. And everyone does it their own way. It feels like you from afar force of positivity and a belief. But how do you believe when you win 3 games total the first 2 years at a place that it's one thing you take over in Alabama or a Texas that's down, like you can win. San Jose State, fair to say, it's really hard to win, and you don't win the first couple of years. How do you know that you could have got to this point where you got to in 2020?
No, you're right on. We didn't have history of successful football teams prior. I think this was our 5th bowl game since like 91 or 92, and this is our 4th winning season in that time in 30 years. So knowing all that, I did think it was going to take someone with a lot of energy and someone with a lot of enthusiasm and belief to get it going in the right direction here. And those conversations with our team, even though our first year ready and we weren't kind of good enough, and we were struggling through the process of kind of revamping everything and trying to, anytime there's transition, like normally that can be a little bit ugly, a little bit challenging. I think for the most part, that's how it happens. And that first year was like that. The players on the team were amazing. They gave us everything they had. We just had some work to do. And then the next year we lost a lot of games, but we were in a lot of close games. And going into our 3rd season, I took screenshots from the scoreboards of the 4th quarter in 6 games. And in 6 games, we were tied, leading, or 1 possession down in the 4th quarter. So that became a whole focus of our offseason, right? Like, okay, we got to the 4th quarter. We are either leading, tied, or within a score, and we lost all these games, right? We were 1-11. So that became like a really huge fireman, a positive thing. And then that next year, that 3rd year, you started to see some of that turn, right? We're leading at Arkansas in the 4th quarter, and they tie it up, and then we have a clock drive to go win it, in a full stadium, in a situation no one thinks we can win. But those seeds were planted the previous year, when like, no, hey, look, we're playing good football. We just need to learn how to finish, and that kind of continued on. And I think this year was obviously the highlight of it.
So do you ever waver? That first year, even the second year, 1-11. I know it's easy to look back and build on those positive momentums, but in the time, we're all trying to positive thinking and trying to take the next step in whatever we're doing. But when you're in it, sometimes if you're struggling, it's challenging. Like how do you do it?
No, you're right.
What is there techniques you use in your mind? Like I'm serious.
Absolutely. I think there's some stuff you can do to help mitigate that or help you get yourself in the right spot. But I think most of those hard conversations are me in my car or were on my way home from the office. Just those moments of self-doubt, those moments of frustration, those moments of disappointment. There was a couple post-game, locker room, empty facility, shower, just crying, just like, oh, God, what is going on here? That happened to me after we lost to Hawaii in 5 overtimes. Nick Rolovich is my buddy. He's the head coach. All I wanted to do was beat his ass, and I couldn't. And, and we went to 5 overtimes, and we missed 3 field goals, or we missed 2 field goals in overtime. Our all-conference kicker just had a bad day, and we lost. And I was just devastated. But I think really, when you have those hard moments, it's also, what are you saying to yourself? And I think that's been a problem or a challenge at San Jose State over time, is that people just tell themselves they can't. They run, and it doesn't matter where. It could be anywhere it could be Kansas State before Coach Snyder got there. Wherever a place that has been historically struggled or hasn't struggled in recent memory or hasn't won in recent memory, I think it's those, do you believe you can? Okay, yeah, there's going to be hard moments, but how quickly can you overcome them? How quickly can you get back on track and continue, building that belief and nurturing that thought of overcoming obstacles? And that, I think, helped us.
I know one of the things you say in recruiting to your athletes is, hey, for your job, for your potential non-football career after college we're in Silicon Valley. Come here. The internships, the connections, the opportunities are all going to be great. The Silicon Valley Business Journal just wrote a cover story about you. I mean, the conversation we're having with you, leadership, right? This is you've elevated a startup to now. I don't know. You guys went public this year, basically. Are you getting are people asking you to come talk to their companies now?
I've done some of that all along, and I think it probably has a little bit more of a connection to just the fact that I grew up here, and a lot of my friends from high school and college are kind of moved up in the Valley in one way or another, and they're just the correlation between athletics and sales, or football, and kind of what we've done here over time has been an interesting conversation for people to hear. I love doing that because I think it gives me a chance to brag on our student athletes. It gives me a chance to build connections for someone who might be interested in hiring one of our young men or young women, from San Jose State to join their organization or their company. That's definitely a fundamental part of us building this program here has been our Beyond Football program. It's run by Tobrook Blaine. She's just a total badass, and she's amazing, and has built out this program that now, we kind of were we were the pilot here with football for the first couple of years, and now we're rolling it out to our entire athletic department. And, the combination of knowing we're in the Valley and how impactful that could be for young people in their future, we combine that with the Beyond Football piece. It's given a chance for a lot of young men to take a real look at San Jose State to kind of hopefully change the perception of what San Jose State University is.
I'm sure when you talk to those people, and definitely I know when you talk to your team, because every coach does it, when you first get a job, but really hammer it home every year, it's the core beliefs, of your program, of you personally as a coach. What are those?
Oh, they're pretty simple. You know what I mean? It's anything that can derail a young person's life. It's treat women with respect. It's no drugs. It's academic process. It's tell the truth. It's really simple. We try and keep it in a simple space that's easy for guys to follow and understand. And I think when you're helping young men grow into men, there's some things that have to be hard and fast and consistent and in their life. And, that's what we try and do for them. And I mentioned the academic thing. That was a big part of what we did when we started here was, we're going to hammer the academic success and process of our young men with them, so that super high level of accountability, because that's the only way you measure achievement in the off season. It's really academics in the weight room. So how are you proving that you're on the path to winning? How do you measure that when you're not playing games, right? Football, you only get 12 games, hoping to play 13. And so, but there's another 8 months out there where you're trying to find ways to prove you're moving in the right direction. And we did that with the academic process in the weight room.
I want to talk to you about quarterbacks, finding quarterbacks, because everything in the game seems to be geared towards finding a quarterback, especially John and I love the draft. We talk about the draft. There's 4 quarterbacks that probably go in the top 8 picks. One of them has been predestined for 3 years, Trevor Lawrence. The other one, Zach Wilson, didn't play it's just, played like 3 games that scout. No one really knows what to make. He played a ton of games. Trey Lance played 1 game at the FCS level this year, and Justin Fields was in the national championship, and nobody knows how to separate those last 3 guys, right? Your quarterback, who was fantastic, you actually had 2 quarterbacks this year. Your quarterback, Nick Starkel, had been at Texas A&M, had been at Arkansas, had been like a primetime blue chip recruit, and came to your program because your former quarterback texted him and told him he should. Like, is there any science to figuring out who's going to be a good quarterback and how to get him?
I don't think so. I think I know that sounds silly for me to say that, but it's not an exact science. And when you look at the incredible amount of money spent on evaluation, certainly at the NFL level, and just what the track record is for finding the right, person for that job for each organization, it looks like it's, like winning the lottery, right? Like you think about the guys that played in the NFC Championship game last weekend, right? Like Tommy Brady's a 6th round draft pick and Drew Brees is a 2nd round draft pick. They're both first ballot Hall of Famer. They're both GOATs in their own right. like if you had known it was going to look like that, obviously they would have been taken first. And so I just find that kind of that storyline and that process fascinating. I think we have a really good group of coaches here. I think our offensive coordinator, Kevin McGibbon, does a great job with our scheme and our process. And Ryan Gunnarsson coaches our quarterbacks, and he's excellent. He's a young coach. He had never coached before. He had been a player personnel director at Oregon State and also at Nebraska with Mike Riley. He was a high school quarterback, and all that good stuff. And we worked together at Oregon State, and I knew he wanted to coach, and I thought he'd be really good at it. And that's proving accurate, as we continue to go with what he did with Josh Love and now Nick Starkel and also Nick Nash. So it's fun to watch. But it is it's not an exact science. And I always watch the NFL thing because I find it so interesting. Just how do you choose, right? Alex Smith versus Aaron Rodgers, right? Like we're all old enough to remember that saga. I mean, that was such a story, especially if you're from the Bay or California. Like that was you have a San Diego kid and a Chico kid, and Niners have the first pick, and so it's just interesting.
Wait a second, John. Hold on, Coach. You called him Tommy Brady. Does that mean that you know him personally?
No, that was like his name because he went to Sarah High School, right? I went to St. Francis. He actually played against my brother. And actually, no, I don't know Tom. And and like what an interesting story, right? Like the whole thing's fascinating. Just like just the world that he lives in is just not. He appears to be getting younger, which I'm jealous of.
Incredible.
He's playing at 43 in the Super Bowl. Like the guy's a freak. He's incredible.
Well, I think it's fair to say with Tom, people have been just shooting me texts like, "What? How is this guy so good?" Obviously, his physical tools. He's big. He's got a big arm. He's accurate. But he feels like one of the most relentless human beings in the history of sports. And obviously, he's a great teammate. And when you talk about that quarterback position, when you deal with it at the collegiate level in terms of the character and the leadership, that maybe someone with a pass rusher or a linebacker, it might not bother you as much. But how much does the kid, the character, when you're recruiting a player, especially some of these transfers now, the transfer portal has basically become quarterback free agency, it feels like, at least from the outside.
Yep.
Sometimes it's like you're getting a hold of a guy that's coming from a Power 5 program that you would never have gone to you originally. But now he's moving. You have to factor in why he's transferring, some of the character stuff, how much, kind of recon scouting do you do on the person as much as the player?
No, yeah, that's a huge part of it is getting all that background. And I think it's for those, the quarterback position, just one guy gets to play. So it's easier to understand a quarterback transferring or entering the portal, right? Like normally some of the issues or challenges that come with some of those guys in the portal or transferring or whatever, it's not always part of that quarterback position. And that's a generalization, I understand, but
three straight number one picks were transfers. So it's
but also
you're right.
Guys, but that was also an extremely high baseline, right? Like it wasn't like what's his name,
Baker.
Like Baker sucked, like he started at Texas Tech as a freshman, right? Like it wasn't like
Kyler Murray played at A&M.
Yeah. Joe Burrow didn't play at San Jose State and then transfer to LSU and ball out, right? He was a top 10 quarterback coming out of high school. So, that kind of projection is not as extreme to me as what maybe happens with somebody who, like the kid that's playing for Buffalo, right? That's a fantastic story. Even though he's a first round draft pick, his path to getting there was not played at Wyoming, right? Like who wants to go throw the football in Wyoming, but he's a fantastic player. What a great player and what a great story.
Did Trey Lance send you his tape?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Would you have you seen him?
No. We only worry about the guys that either fit or that we can get. And then we're also heavy recruit California, right? So, that part of it's a little different for us. We're not necessarily nationwide for those. Now, the Starkel situation, you already mentioned how that happened. That was much different for us. just because of how, him and Josh Love, our quarterback, who had really had an incredible senior year, Mountain West Offensive Player of the Year, felt great about his process with us, and him and Nick were roommates at Steve Clarkson's Futures Camp, and that's how that happened.
How do you balance recruiting? Because you're recruiting a guy all in, and then maybe an Oregon State comes in, or maybe a UCLA comes in, and you're going to lose the guy. Has that been a learning
Nevada
process?
had Justin Herbert. They were the first ones to offer Herbert.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Has that been a learning process since you've been back at San Jose State, coming from Oregon State?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you have to just identify best you can how you think those will shake out, and then you have to have plan B and plan C and all that stuff. I think depending on, we've had a little bit of success kind of recruiting against some of the schools in the pack, which has been good for us. And then also back to that, imperfect evaluation process or best you can, it's still a projection. And what we found here is that we're much more of a developmental program, and our best players have been guys that came in as freshmen and developed over time, and by their junior or senior year playing their best football. And I think that's going to be the space that we always fit in. So it gives us a chance to take, we had Josh Oliver, tight end, drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago by Jacksonville, and he was recruited by the previous staff, but they did a great job of evaluating and projecting him. And he came in as a 6'3", 215-pound tight end, and he left as a 6'4.5", 255-pound Greek god. Like, he looked ridiculous, by the end of it. And he's a 3rd-round draft pick. So that developmental part of that process for us is a little bit where we will lean most of the time.
You know who's on the Spartans, Middlekauff, is Derek Deese Jr.
Yeah, big tight end.
And I, calling a San Jose State game this year, you said you watched him on tape and you knew he was a tight end. He just didn't know it yet. I mean, is that a guy that could? Is he? When you talk about developing pros, because his body is fantastic. He just never blocked anybody before this year.
And that's what was so impressive about him is, when he played high school, he played receiver in high school and junior college. And there's actually Steve Mariucci is the one that called me and said, "Hey, look at this kid. I think he's a tight end, but he's playing receiver. His dad played for me." And so I threw on the tape and I took the offensive staff and I just kind of told him that backstory. But everybody said the same thing. He was 6'4". He was kind of thick. He ran well, probably not well enough to play outside at wideout, but he had incredible ball skills. And so, had a conversation with him. He ended up here, and the rest is history. But he has developed into an incredible blocker, like fantastic. I really thought, that he should have, it's right now the trend in tight end is that those guys are just big wideouts, right? They're just big receivers that are not attached to the formation. And, that those guys should be labeled as wideouts, like they're not, you're Jason Witten and those guys that are Tony Gonzalez going to stay in line and block, which is what you need your tight ends to do. They got to run and catch too, but you see Gronk's doing a lot more blocking right now than he is running and catching balls. Right. So, but I think Derek Deese's future is really bright. He's an awesome young man, great student, gets really good grades. We watched him kind of grow up and mature here. We're lucky to have him on our team. I know that.
Well, we throw out the word development so much, whether it's college or even in the NFL. When you say that word, what does that truly mean? Is it just practicing every day? You naturally get better as a 18, 19, 20-year-old guy? Is it a progression of eating, weight room? Is it encompassing everything? Is it playing in games? Is it reps in the spring? When you say the word development with a player, what does that mean?
No, I think it's all those things. It's definitely not a one phase or another. For us, it's a little bit more the projection and then the development, right? So it's going to take some time to get, Derek Deese to the point where he can block, a big, badass defensive end. But then midway through his first year playing with us, he was starting to do some of that. We were like, whoa, okay. And so giving those kids a chance. For us, we do take a really holistic approach to their development. We already mentioned the beyond football part of it, in terms of their down the road stuff. But beyond football also for us is community service, campus engagement. And so, that I think that's all part of their developmental process as they're going from high school to college to whatever is after college.
Who's the best player you ever saw before he was a star that you knew was going to be a star?
Ooh, that's a good question. Before he was a star?
You can change the rules of the question for anybody you want to talk about. That was great.
You know what? I think maybe Marquis Lee, when he was in high school at Sarah High School, he was playing opposite of George Farmer, who was the everyone's everything guy. I think they had 5 Division I guys. I was at San Jose at the time. I was recruiting a linebacker and a and a nose guard. And like you were talking about earlier, last week, Colorado came in, took the linebacker, and ASU came in and took the nose guard. But because of that, I got to see them play a couple times. And Marquis Lee was unbelievable, just incredible. And he wasn't really kind of, obviously he went to USC, so he ended up getting that kind of notoriety. But early on, that was not his profile because of all the other guys on that team. I think they had 6 Pac-10, Pac-12 guys on that roster, on a high school roster, which is it's pretty salty.
There's a famous Justin Wilcox story when he was recruiting Kellen Moore, and he goes into Pete's office, and Pete goes, "We're not going to sign this 5'10" quarterback." And he said, if this guy doesn't work out, you can take away a scholarship from me next year on the road. He kind of pounded the table. Pete gave in, and then the rest is history. As a head coach, how often does your coaches are your scouts, when they come in pushing a guy and you're on the fence, do you get talked into, or has that ever happened when you were an assistant coach, you had to do that to your head coach and it either worked out or it didn't work out?
No, I think those conversations happen all the time. Hopefully they happen in the staff room, so there's some accountability amongst the coaches, right? Like if it's one-on-one, we call that the backdoor boogie, right? Like
little backdoor deal.
Someone comes in my office and they're like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about so-and-so again." But so normally we try and force those. We force the issue with those so that they're out in front and everybody, because it's really easy to pound the table for a guy when it's you one-on-one with the head coach. It takes a little more courage and a little more certainty to do it in front of the whole staff. But the really challenging thing or the fun thing, I guess, about coaching is that when you do it and it doesn't work out, the staff never lets you forget it. I mean, every time that kid doesn't go to class or is late for a workout, the staff is like, looking at you like, "Hey, Brennan, way to go. Thanks for pounding on the table for so-and-so."
How about Devontae Adams?
That's an awesome story, man. Just fantastic. That was in my, I had left San Jose and he was coming out of Pali, and what a fantastic player. I love just the story, his work with Keith Williams, who was his coach at Fresno, and I replaced Keith here. So Keith and I have been friends for a long time. Wide receiver guys tend to stick together, which is, my background. So I love that he's continued to work out with Devontae and continue to help him grow and develop as a player. It's really, really, really neat, but it's awesome for the Bay to have a guy like that. I think it continues to prove, we were talking about Tom Brady earlier, that there's really talented football players in Northern California.
Obviously being a head coach, there are a lot of cool parts. Everyone starts knowing your name. You make money. When you win, you get the accolades. What's the hardest part about being a head coach?
Well, we didn't win much early on, man. So there was lots of beatdowns publicly there. But I will say the hardest part about being a head coach is the impact has, because people will say ridiculous stuff to your wife. They say really ignorant. They're not trying to be rude, and they're not really even aware, but they don't have the same caution they have when they talk to me. Right?
You're saying in person, not on like social media, like in real life.
Yeah, in person. Yeah, and so there's definitely, that's the hard part. Or our first 2 years, I remember coming home from practice in the middle of the week, and we just gotten drilled by Utah State on the road, and they had a really good team. And my daughter was a sophomore. She was at the kitchen table. She was studying, and she just looked up and she started crying. And she said, "Daddy, are we getting fired?" And so I think those are the and they're coaches' kids. They grow up in it. They get it. But shoot, when you win or lose, they feel it as much as anybody in the team, anybody on the program, because they have to deal with it out there in the real world. Like for us, most of the time it's around here, it's internalized, or for me as the head coach, it just comes with it. But for them, you got a 15-year-old kid not really equipped for that kind of scrutiny or that kind of intense criticism.
Did you ever worry about that the first couple of years when they weren't going well? I mean, is it natural that cross your mind?
Yeah, and you try to talk to them about it and try and help them build up some thick skin as they're going through it. But it's not easy. It's not a easy conversation, and you're not going to be there to help them work through it when some kid says, your dad sucks, the Spartans suck, or whatever that is, right? And so trying to help them kind of have the right courage, the right language, that kind of stuff is something that my wife and I have been, educating them on for, 15 years.
You tell them keep a list, and now when that kid's asking for tickets, when the Spartans are good, you remember.
But it is cool, and this year has been a great lesson for them. As quickly as people were to be critical of them and what we were doing here, they were just as quick to be supportive and awesome. And so it's a great lesson for our players. It's a great lesson for my children, right? Like, hey, everybody loves a winner, but it's hard to win. And so how you deal with the hard times, how you deal with the defeats is going to have much more impact on your life than the success does. And trying to help our players and our, like I said, my own kids learn that and understand that is challenging, but I think it's valuable for them. I think it can help them live a better life.
Well, you guys did that this year. I mean, not just being away from home to start the season, but playing a must-win game, home game. You guys played a home game in Vegas at the end of the year to get to win the Mountain West title. Was to get to the Mountain West title game. That's right, to get to the Mountain West title game. And then you played the home game to win the Mountain West title game. But it was not at home. So,
right.
Brent, congrats, man. Great. Thanks for making time. It's great to see you again. Great to talk to you.
Yeah, appreciate it,
Brent. You guys are awesome.
It's our
Thank
pleasure.
you. It's great hanging out. Appreciate it.